What would you do if someone publicly humiliated you? In front of billionaires, investors, and live cameras? What if it happened at the exact moment you were about to sign a $500 million deal? This isn't just a story about money. This is a story about power, respect, and knowing your worth. Dr. Naomi Carter was a self-made black woman CEO who built her company from nothing. No connections, no shortcuts, no safety net. She earned her seat at the table. But when a powerful billionaire family looked at her and decided she didn't belong, they made one mistake. They thought money gave them control. They were wrong. Because what happened next shocked the room, canceled a $500 million deal, and proved one unforgettable truth. Respect is more valuable than any check. Stay with me, because the moment she walked away, everything changed. The room went silent. Not the polite kind of silence that follows applause, but the heavy, uncomfortable kind where everyone feels something has gone terribly wrong, yet no one dares to speak. Just seconds earlier, the atmosphere had been electric. Cameras flashed nonstop. Journalists whispered excitedly to one another. Investors adjusted their suits, ready to witness history. Crystal glasses clinked softly beneath massive golden chandeliers that reflected wealth, power, and legacy. This was supposed to be a moment people would talk about for decades. A $500 million partnership between one of the most powerful billionaire families in America and one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the world. The deal promised innovation, expansion, and headlines across every major financial network. At the center of it all stood Dr. Naomi Carter. She wore a tailored navy blue suit, her posture straight, her expression calm. Years of pressure had taught her how to stand firm in rooms like this. Naomi wasn't here by accident. She had built her company from a tiny rented office with second-hand desks into a global tech force employing thousands. She had fought through doubt, rejection, and endless closed doors. She had earned advanced degrees while working nights. She had pitched investors who barely looked up from their phones. And now, she stood on a stage surrounded by billionaires as their equal, or so she believed. As Naomi stepped forward and reached for the microphone, a quiet laugh cut through the air. It came from Richard Hawthorne, the aging patriarch of the Hawthorne family. Old money, old power, and a reputation for saying whatever he pleased. He leaned toward his son, not bothering to lower his voice. "Are we sure she's the CEO?" he said, smirking. "She doesn't really look like one." The words hung in the air. A few nervous chuckles followed, not because people agreed, but because they didn't know what else to do. Some guests stared down at their glasses. Others glanced at Naomi, then quickly looked away. The cameras kept rolling. Naomi froze for just half a second. She had heard comments like this before, in boardrooms, at conferences, in private conversations she wasn't meant to overhear. But this was different. This wasn't whispered behind closed doors. This was public. Broadcasted, recorded forever. Her chest tightened, but her face didn't change. Inside her mind, memories rushed back, being mistaken for an assistant, being asked who the real decision-maker was, being told she was impressive for someone like you. And now here it was again, right when she thought she had finally made it. Naomi slowly lowered her hand from the microphone. She met Richard Hawthorne's eyes, and in that moment, the room realized something important. This wasn't just an awkward comment. This was the beginning of something no one saw coming. Naomi didn't flinch. Not on the outside, at least. Years of experience had taught her how to stay still when the world tried to shake her, how to keep her face calm while her thoughts raced, how to swallow the sting and stand tall anyway. She had faced moments like this before, just never this publicly, never under chandeliers, cameras, and billion-dollar smiles. Growing up, Naomi watched her mother leave the house before sunrise and return long after dark. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. And yet, people still spoke down to her, still questioned her intelligence, still acted as if hard work from someone like her was somehow unexpected. Naomi learned early that effort alone wasn't enough. She had to be better, smarter, more prepared. In college, professors praised her work, but warned her not to aim too high. When she pursued advanced degrees, people asked why she was pushing herself so hard, as if ambition itself was dangerous. When she started her company, investors smiled politely, then asked if there was a male co-founder or a senior advisor they could talk to instead. She raised millions while being doubted at every step. She succeeded anyway, but none of that prepared her for this moment, standing on a stage, under bright lights, with reporters and investors watching closely, with her own executive team seated just feet away, people who believed in her, people who had followed her vision. And still, Richard Hawthorne wasn't finished. "You know," he said casually, waving his hand as if discussing something minor, "when we imagined partnering with this company, we pictured, well, someone with more experience." The word experience echoed through Naomi's mind. More experience? She had led 3 successful company exits before turning 40. She held multiple patents. Her technology was used by governments, hospitals, and global corporations. The Hawthorne family hadn't discovered her company. They had chased it. But facts didn't matter in this moment. The message underneath his words was loud and clear. "You don't belong here. You don't fit the picture we had in our heads." Naomi felt the familiar weight, the unspoken expectation to explain herself, to prove herself, to make others comfortable. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled. Not the kind of smile meant to please, but the kind that comes from deep understanding. Because while the room saw a woman being humiliated, Naomi saw something else entirely. She saw fear. She saw a powerful family struggling to accept that the future didn't look like them. That control was shifting. That brilliance no longer asked permission. They thought they were testing her. They didn't realize they had already revealed their weakness. And in that quiet moment, Naomi understood something important. This wasn't just another battle she had to endure. This was a turning point, and she was holding more power than anyone in that room realized. Naomi reached for the microphone. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost quiet, but it commanded attention. Conversation stopped. Chairs shifted. Every camera in the room zoomed in. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady, calm, controlled. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne," she said, her tone polite and professional. No anger, no shaking, just clarity. "Experience is indeed important, which is why my company spent 12 years developing technology your own advisors admitted they couldn't replicate." A ripple moved through the room. Some investors exchanged glances. A few reporters looked up from their notes. The confidence in her words wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. Naomi continued, meeting the audience's eyes one by one. "But tonight isn't about proving myself," she said. "It's about partnership, respect, and shared values." The air felt heavier now. This wasn't the response anyone expected. There was no emotional reaction, no defensive explanation, just truth, spoken cleanly, without hesitation. Richard Hawthorne leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His expression barely changed. "You're taking this too personally," he said with a dismissive shrug. "This is just business." The phrase landed like a challenge. Naomi stopped speaking. For a brief moment, she simply stood there, holding the microphone in her hand. The silence stretched. People shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what would come next. Then Naomi slowly looked around the room. She looked at the investors who had studied her numbers for months, at the journalists who knew this deal would shape headlines, at her own team, people who had sacrificed, believed, and trusted her leadership. And she realized something important. Everyone was watching to see what she would tolerate. She turned back to Richard Hawthorne. "I agree," she said quietly. "This is business." There was no bitterness in her voice, no sarcasm, just certainty. Naomi placed the microphone gently on the stand. The soft click echoed through the hall. Then she turned and walked away from the stage. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Executives leaned forward in disbelief. Reporters scrambled to their phones. A few investors stood halfway out of their seats, unsure if this was a dramatic pause or the end of everything. Naomi didn't look back. Her heels echoed against the marble floor as she walked past stunned faces, past the cameras, past the billionaires who moments ago believed they held all the power. But power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it refuses to explain. Sometimes it refuses to beg. And sometimes, the strongest statement a leader can make is knowing when to walk away. In that moment, Naomi Carter didn't raise her voice. She changed the direction of the room. Confusion spread instantly. At first, no one moved. People glanced at one another, unsure if what they had just witnessed was real. Naomi walking off the stage wasn't part of the script. This wasn't how billion-dollar announcements ended. Then the whispers started. Low voices turned urgent. Smiles disappeared. Security shifted positions as Naomi's legal team rose from their seats and followed her without hesitation. Her board members exchanged stunned looks, some shocked, others quietly impressed. Cameras scrambled. Reporters rushed to the aisles, phones already raised, sending breaking alerts before anyone fully understood what had just happened. Investors whispered into headsets. The atmosphere transformed from celebration to chaos in seconds. Less than 20 minutes later, the shock became official. A press release landed in every major newsroom at the same time. Carter Dynamics officially withdraws from the Hawthorne partnership negotiations. $500 million. Gone. No delay. No negotiation. No second chance. Just like that. Inside a private conference room behind the stage, the Hawthorne family erupted. "This is unbelievable," one executive shouted, slamming a folder onto the table. "She can't just walk away from us." Another snapped, "Do you have any idea who we are?" But the truth was already clear. Naomi could walk away, because this deal wasn't designed to save her company. It was designed to save theirs. The Hawthorne empire had been struggling to modernize. Their advisors had warned them. Without Carter Dynamics technology, they were falling behind. Market share was slipping. Competitors were catching up fast. Naomi knew this. She had seen the numbers. She had read the desperation hidden behind their confidence. And now, the balance of power had shifted. Within hours, analysts started asking uncomfortable questions on financial networks. Why would Carter Dynamics leave such a massive deal? What did they know that the public didn't? Within days, the answers began to appear. Competitors came knocking, quietly at first, then boldly. International firms offered better terms, more respect, full creative control. Governments reached out, interested in long-term partnerships. The offers weren't just equal. They were better. Meanwhile, the Hawthorne family faced the consequences. Stock prices dipped. Board members demanded explanations. Private apologies were drafted, rewritten, and quietly shelved when it became clear Naomi wasn't coming back to the table. They had assumed she needed them. They were wrong. Naomi hadn't just canceled a deal. She had exposed something far more powerful. Who really needed whom? And in doing so, she sent a message that echoed far beyond that room, one that executives, investors, and leaders everywhere couldn't ignore. Respect isn't optional, and power, once revealed, can never be taken back. 1 week later, Naomi stood on a very different stage. This time, it wasn't a luxury ballroom filled with nervous smiles and hidden agendas. It was a global business forum, broadcast live across continents, watched by entrepreneurs, executives, and students who dreamed of leading one day. As Naomi walked onto the stage, something remarkable happened. The entire room rose to its feet. There were no whispers, no smirks, no doubt about who she was or why she was there. The applause was long, steady, and filled with respect, not just for her success, but for her courage. Naomi waited patiently for the clapping to fade. She didn't rush. She didn't smile for the cameras. She stood calmly, centered, exactly as she had a week earlier. Only this time, the power dynamic had completely changed. She never mentioned the Hawthorne family by name. She didn't insult anyone. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't relive the humiliation. Instead, she shared a simple truth. "Success doesn't excuse disrespect," she said, "and no amount of money is worth shrinking who you are to make others comfortable." The words landed harder than any accusation ever could. Within hours, the clip spread across social media. Millions watched and shared it. Comment sections filled with people saying they felt seen, understood, and inspired. Business leaders praised her restraint. Young women replayed the speech over and over. A black woman CEO had chosen dignity over $500 million, and she had won. Days later, The consequences continued to unfold. The Hawthorne family released a short, carefully worded apology. It said just enough to protect their image, but not enough to undo the damage. Their stock prices dipped. Analysts questioned leadership. Board members resigned quietly, one by one, away from the spotlight. Meanwhile, Naomi moved forward. Carter Dynamics announced a new partnership, larger than the last one, more global, and entirely on her terms. The agreement gave her company creative control, long-term stability, and something money alone could never buy, respect. Naomi didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't give interviews attacking anyone. She simply kept building, because the lesson had already been taught. Power isn't always loud. It doesn't always dominate the room. It doesn't always demand attention. Sometimes, power walks away. And when it does, when it refuses to compromise its worth, the world finally listens. Naomi Carter didn't just change her own future. She changed the rules of the room. This story isn't just about business. It's about choosing dignity over dollars. It's about knowing when to walk away, even when the world tells you to stay quiet. If this story inspired you, if it reminded you to never shrink yourself for anyone, backhand index pointing right, hit the like button. It helps this story reach more people. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to the channel for powerful, real-life stories like this. Backhand index pointing right, and comment below, would you have walked away? Because sometimes, the strongest move isn't fighting back. It's walking away and letting the world finally listen.